Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this class on online sources for South African research. I'm glad that you could join me, and I hope that I will be able to provide some useful information for you. There are some really great online sources for research in South Africa, and we're going to look at my grade 8 in no particular order except for perhaps the first one. Besides locating those original documents for our family, it's also really important that we place our ancestors into their specific geographical, historical, and social context. They didn't live in a vacuum, but they were affected by the events and the people around them. And there are so many resources available to us to help us do that, to sort of put the flesh on their bones so that we can really get to know our ancestors. And who doesn't want to do that? So let's jump right in. So let's start with what is, in my opinion, the #1 resource for South African research, and that is FamilySearch.org. Completely free. You just need to sign up for an account, but you will never be asked for a credit card or to pay for something on FamilySearch. It is well worth your time to really take a look at what the site offers. Yes, there are historical records available to us, but there is a lot more on this site too. When you go to the menu on FamilySearch.org, go to search, and then you'll get a drop-down menu like you see on the screen. Go to records, and you'll get a screen that most of us are very familiar with. But let's click on the map this time instead of doing a straight search in that search area. When you click on the continent of Africa, you'll get a drop-down menu. Scroll down to South Africa and click on that. Now you're on the South Africa page, which shows you everything that FamilySearch has for South Africa. Lots of wonderful places to go for more information on South African research. On the left of the screen, you can see that there are some learning courses. There are videos on how to research in South Africa. There are not 74 courses, only 3, so I'm not sure why that's there, but some of them may be a little dated, but still worth taking a look at if you're just starting out. There's a link to the FamilySearch Wiki, which is an excellent starting point whenever you're doing research in a new location, or even if you're just wanting to brush up on what you think you know and what's available for South Africa. You can also see in the search box there that this search is to search indexed historical records. FamilySearch has, and I mentioned this in one of my other classes, sort of 2 broad sets of records, those that are indexed and those that are image only. So if you search within this box, you are going to be searching those that have been indexed. Now don't forget about those image only collections because they are very important too. So right under that search box is the list of all the record collections which have been indexed. You can see that on your screen. And then right underneath that, you'll find a listing of the image only historical records. So again, image only means that these are records that have not been indexed yet, but they're available to you to browse through page by page. Now the next thing that you see on the screen is the catalog materials. Once you click on that drop-down menu, you can filter the catalog to show you collections only for birth, marriage and death, or history, memories and stories. This South African page is full of information to help you. Take a look and see what you think. All right, we are moving on to #2 on my list, and this is the South African National Archives database. NAIRS is the acronym for the National Automated Archival Information Retrieval System. Quite a mouthful, as I've mentioned in one of my earlier classes, so I just call it NAIRS. This is the older system. It's reached its server capacity now, so there is a new system called NARSA, and NARSA stands for the National Archives and Records Service of South Africa. It's still important to search both databases because I'm not quite sure that all of the information has been transferred over yet. So this National Archives online database is used to find documentation on your ancestors in any of the provincial archives, but it is only an index. It's a finding aid. It provides you with enough information to either go to FamilySearch.org and look for the image there, the original document there, or to send someone to the archives for you to hire somebody or to send a friend or family member so that they can locate the original documents themselves. This is what you'll see on the NAIRS search page, allowing you to filter your search either by a specific archive or be able to search all the archives at once. It's a good idea to read their help page so you can get the most out of your search so that you can learn how to search effectively. Now, when you've done a search, the results will look like this. Again, you want to read that help page. But to give you a little bit more help, my next tip is going to be key. And here's when I want to give a shout out to genealogist Matthew Bowie. He has a YouTube channel where he has a video that will take you step by step through the process of searching on NAIRS and then being able to go to FamilySearch and use that information to locate the original image. Now, not everything that you find on the National Archives database is on FamilySearch. It hasn't all been digitized, but there are quite a few in particular estate files that you can find there. So go take a look at Matthew Bowie's YouTube channel. He has many videos there that are really key for learning how to research in South African records. Number 3 on my list is the Genealogical Society of South Africa online. The society itself consists of about 12 branches. 11 are based in various locations around South Africa, and then 1 is online. They conduct several projects, the results of which are published online, freely available to search. I've mentioned their gravestone project in my other class. They publish gravestone photographs on the internet, again, freely available to search their photo albums by name, cemetery, etc. I recently saw this particular project now contains more than 860,000 photographs of gravestones in South Africa. I had a wonderful breakthrough on one of my lines by using the Gravestone Project database. My great-grandmother Christina had married a man by the name of Alexander Charles Ben in Knysna, South Africa in February of 1909. But by 1913, she was married to another man by the name of John Curran. So I had always wondered what had happened to her first husband. I assumed that he had died or they had divorced, but I could find nothing on him after 1909. So I was leaning towards the fact that he had probably died. I contacted cemeteries via email. I either had no response or just a negative one. But a few years ago, I was just doing a routine search on the Gravestone Project database. And who did I find but Alexander Charles Ben? That is his gravestone that you see on the screen there. The cemetery he was buried in had recently been cleared, and photographs had been taken of all the gravestones in that cemetery. And there was Alexander Charles Ben's gravestone. It's not in the best condition, but it does state that he died on the 23rd of December in what looks like 1909 at the age of 28. So very young, and had died about 10 months after marrying my great-grandmother. So I was able to go to NAIRS, and I was able to look on the database there, put in his name and date of death, and locate a reference to his estate file. And in that estate file was his death notice. And that death notice gave the information on his parents' names, his wife Christina, and the date of his death, 23rd of December 1909, all corresponding to the gravestone photograph. But there was another surprise, something that I had not realized. And you can see that at the bottom of the screen there. They had had a child. He was named Alexander Charles after his father. I had no idea that there were any children from this marriage. And so this was a wonderful breakthrough for me using the Gravestone Project and then being able to go to NAIRS and locate his death notice and learn about this missing child. One of the other projects at the Genealogical Society of South Africa is the Google Earth Cemetery Initiative, which maps all of the cemetery locations that they have, allowing you to search geographically for a cemetery. So that could be really important because you may not know exactly where an ancestor was buried, but you may have an idea of where they died. And so you'll be able to actually click on that area and look at the cemeteries around where he may have died and see what's available. You can see if it's been photographed and if it's been published. Other projects that they are running, which are available online to search, are their collection of church photographs, a funeral program collection, and access to what they call family registers. Now, these family registers are compilations of research that members of a particular family have put together into a document. And if you're researching any of the progenitors or the very early settlers of South Africa, you may be able to make use of these family registers. Now, we have to be cautious because although some of them do contain source lists, some of them don't have any sources of where the information came from. On your screen, you can see a listing of all of the other available records to search on their site. So this is the site of the Genealogical Society of South Africa online. Very, very worthwhile. We're on to number 4 on the list, and this is Stamos.com. Stamoor is an Afrikaans word for a progenitor. So the very first individual to go to the colonies and to settle there. Now this site is focused on the early Cape progenitors who came from other parts of Europe, Asia, and other places. And as the quotation that you can see on the slide says, many South Africans whose ancestors lived at the Cape are part of one big extended family. The custom of referring to seniors as oom or tannie is not just out of respect, but indeed reflect the reality of the close familial bond and the small collective genetic pool. South African Stamos or progenitors came from Africa, Europe, Asia, and other places. Some were VOC workers, free settlers, Huguenots, slaves, and indigenous. So you can search this site by last name if you know it. It also has some great educational articles on the people of South Africa, the land itself, and also some church records. Now, if you have a Stamoor in your tree, you can easily search for the name on the site, and you'll usually see a page like this, with some information on the progenitor and then a contact information for the person who added the info and is researching that line. So this is a great way to make a connection with others researching the same lines as you. And isn't that what genealogy or family history is all about? We want to make those connections that will help us to go a bit further back in our research. Moving along now to number 5, and these are our university and library collections. Somewhat unknown and a little less used than they should be because they have some wonderful information. The first one that we're going to look at is my alma mater. This is the University of the Witwatersrand. It's their Historical Papers Archive. They hold over 3,400 collections covering the mid-17th century to the present. And there are many digitized collections available online. For example, there's an 1867 photograph album of the visit of Prince Albert to Cape Town. And there are the extremely fragile fragments of the VOC account books. That's the Dutch East India Company account books from 1698. So go take a look at this, the site and their collections. You'll also find things like the records of the trial, State versus Nelson Mandela, held in the Pretoria Regional Court in October of 1962. Those are available on this site. There are originals of a newspaper published during the siege of Mafeking during the Boer War from 1899 to 1900. And I love this. This was published shells permitting. So if you have an ancestor involved in the siege of Mafeking, this newspaper would be a great way to incorporate some historical context. The University of Pretoria Africana collection, they hold digital maps, historical books, manuscripts and journals, photographs. They have a good collection of Anglo-Boer War documents and photographs, and you can find books and diaries on life in South Africa. For example, in 1855, the Reverend George Brown moved from England to Graaff-Reinet in the Cape, and he wrote a book titled Personal Adventures in South Africa. So it's a great way to learn about life in 1855 in the Cape Colony. UCT is the University of Cape Town. This is their digital libraries collection, and it has some wonderful online collections. Their digital map collection is really worth looking at. It is a collaborative initiative between the University of Cape Town and Stanford University. And so a selection of African historical maps held in the UCT libraries is also available on Stanford's Maps of Africa site. Now, as well as Cape Town street maps, they hold African historical maps and military maps made by British intelligence during the Anglo-Boer War. Those were really interesting to look at. There are historic photograph collections, as well as more recent photograph collections from South Africa in the 1950s and 60s. So well worth a look at their site. Sun Digital is the name of the collections from the Stellenbosch University. It contains archives, finding aids, history, images, literature, and access to the first Dutch newspaper in South Africa, the Africana, starting around 1845. Now, the small article that you see on your screen was published in the Africana newspaper in January of 1871. It's a little difficult to read, so there is a transcription on your screen. Now remember, this is 1871 in South Africa, only a very few years after the first diamonds had been discovered on the banks of the Orange River. So diamond fever had hit the colonies, with men either hitting it really big or walking away with nothing. So this was titled The Diamond Fields, and it reads, a correspondent to the EP Herald, which was another newspaper, says that a man of the name of Fouchier, living in this division, passed through here on this day from the diamond fields at Du Toit's Pan, with diamonds to the tune of between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds sterling, the result of 11 days' labor with 2 black men and 1 white. What a lucky individual. I thought it was kind of an understated response to someone working for 11 days and ending up with between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds sterling, which would have been a huge amount in those days. Now, I had an ancestor who had sought his fortune in Du Toit's Pan, but he wasn't quite so fortunate. He left with pretty much nothing to show after months of labor. What I do know about Du Toit's Pan was it was not a very pleasant place to live and work. There is a book called The World's Story, and it describes Du Toit's Pan as the village being very melancholy to look at. Everything is made of corrugated iron, and the whole is very mean to the eye. There has been no rain for some months. The thermometer showed over 90 in the shade and over 150 in the sun. There is not a blade of grass in the place, and out of the dry, dusty grounds were dug in all directions pits and walls and roadways. Carts are hither and thither. So it gives you a great visual to imagine what life must have been like for these fortune hunters. And this is how we add flesh to the bones of our ancestors. It's how we get to understand a little of what their life was like, and especially the life of somebody that was fortune hunting, diamond mining. Focusing more on the Kimberley diamond mines, the Africana Library houses an excellent collection of books, maps, photographs, documents, and manuscripts focused on Kimberley, the diamond fields, and then the region's role in the history of South Africa. Although they don't have a digital collection, I did want to include them because they have been quick to answer my queries, and a few years ago I received pages of information on my great-grandfather who had left County Durham, England, to work in the diamond mines of Kimberley for De Beers Consolidated. And he had been there from 1893 to 1910, and I reached out to the Africana Library in Kimberley, and they were really wonderful in their response. All right, we are moving along to number 6 on my list, and this is digital books. I am a big believer, as you may have noticed, in placing our ancestor in context. So I want to look at the geographical context, the historical context, cultural and social. As we mentioned earlier, they didn't live in a vacuum. Events around them, it affected their families. So things like books, articles, academic journals, diaries, and newspapers are all a great resource for fleshing out those bones. FamilySearch has a digital book collection. Just searching with the word South Africa brings up something like 84,000 results. You can also look at places like Internet Archive, HathiTrust, and Google Books. They all have hundreds of freely available historical books on South Africa. Even searching the Library of Congress here in the US results in collections of maps, photographs, and manuscripts. And in your handout, I've included a lot of the URLs to particular South African books. And number 7, going along with books, are directories and immigrant guides. These are probably one of my favorite sources to add context, especially immigrant guides. Settlers to South Africa may have received their information on the country and what to expect from various immigrant guides. Of course, the main reason for their publication was to encourage immigration, and so they often made life in the colonies sound very easy and very pleasant when it was oftentimes not so. Even getting to the colonies was made to sound extremely wonderful. Take a look at the short passage that you see on your screen and how wonderful the journey from the British Isles to the Cape was made to sound. And from the little red box there, it says, "Though voyages to the Cape cannot be promised immunity from the ordinary inconveniences of a sea life, the voyage is one of the pleasantest in the world. The Bay of Biscay once passed, the steamer slips through the summer of the world, free from the storms of the North Atlantic or the hurricanes of the Indian Ocean." It makes you just want to jump on a ship and head to the colonies, right? Now, immigrant guides can be found online for free at archive.org, HathiTrust, Google Books, and in FamilySearch's digital book collection. Directories can also be very helpful, not only for locating an ancestor, but for gaining some background context to their life. This Natal Almanac and Directory of 1897 contained things like the phases of the moon, a history of the Natal colonies, butter making and canning tips, rail schedules, and outlined the laws of the colony. It also had full-page advertisements, like the one that you see on the screen, including that they had beer that was specially suited to the climate. And at the end is an alphabetical listing of people in the Natal colony in 1897. Now, these directories are a little bit of a hit and miss as to which years are covered and in which areas in South Africa. But we don't have a census to work with, so they can be of great help in locating an ancestor. Those that I've found online, I've included in your handouts. And wrapping up now with number 8, a really great online resource are Facebook groups. Now, while Facebook may not be your favorite social media site, it does have some excellent groups for South African genealogy. And 2 that I'd like to give a shout out to are the groups South African Genealogy. There were about 12,000 members last time that I checked. You will not find a more friendly, helpful group of family historians and genealogists with vast experience in South African records. I've had so many queries about my own family answered and received great help when needed. If you're using DNA in your research, then you need to look at the group Using DNA for Genealogy South Africa. Very, very helpful, again, with people that are just so willing to help you with any queries that you might have. So those are my top 8. There are numerous excellent websites devoted to South African research, far too many to go into in just 20 minutes. So I've included those links in your class handout. There are really great online resources for South African research, from original documents to books that can give you a sense of what life was like for your ancestor in South Africa. Have fun putting your ancestor into context. Have fun bringing them to life with these resources. And thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. My contact details are on the screen. Enjoy the rest of RootsTech Connect 2021.